Hello, everybody. We're really so happy to be here today. Um, we are delighted to be able to speak to all of you New Yorkers and New Jersey people. It's just such a delight to speak to people locally, where we might have actually gotten to meet you had we been able to do this in person. It feels a little more personal. So we're really happy to be here today. And we'd like to introduce ourselves to you because you don't know us or why we're qualified to be speaking to you or anything. So I'm Dr. Ivy Peltz.
I'm Dr. Eric Studley.
And we're going to introduce each other since it doesn't seem so braggy.
Right. So Dr. Ivy Peltz graduated from NYU 1983. Not only did she get her DDS degree, she then went on, got her master's in higher education. And because that wasn't enough, she then got her PhD in higher education. She was a group practice director at the school and taught there for over 20 years.
Right. And by the school, we mean New York University
Yes.
College of Dentistry, but we do not favor any students over any others,
No.
just so you know.
No, we bleed the same color as everybody else.
Exactly. So, and Dr. Studley also graduated from NYU in 1985, and the College of Dentistry. I didn't add that. And he was a group practice director. He was also the director of practice management at NYU College of Dentistry, and that was a 3-year course. It ran from D2 to D4, and there were approximately 70 lectures involved in that course. So we have no lack of material for you. If you're happy with the lectures that we give, we're happy to give more. And we can just keep going and going. Right. In addition to our academic affiliation, we both retired 2 years ago. We're the founders of Doccupations, which is an online algorithmic dental job matching service. So you're all going to want to sign up. There's no fee whatsoever. What you do is you go to www.doccupations.com, and when you get to the billing page, you put in promo code ESSCares, all in capitals. And you're going to want to do it whether you're in D1 or all the way up through D4, because you want to do it now, because the process of filling out your profile is actually going to help you decide some of the things that we're going to be talking about tonight, like you want to be a dentist, but what kind of dentist do you want to be in? We're not even talking about specialty or anything like that. We're talking about what types of patients do you want to treat, what kind of work-life balance are you looking for, all of that. So in addition to Doccupations, Dr. Studley also is the CEO and president of Dr. Eric S. Studley and Associates, Inc., which is an insurance company based on the needs of dentists. So you're going to be needing him for that too. And he does lovely lectures on insurance, like malpractice insurance and disability insurance and all those things that you're going to find very confusing, but he can help clear up for you. So without further ado, we would like to start. We have a lot of material to get through, and we just have 1 hour, and we've gotten a lot of questions from you. So
yes, so thank you. We love that.
We're hoping that we're actually going to answer a lot of those in our presentation, but if not, we will be reading as many questions as we can get to.
So great topic to start with, preparation for employment. How do I find a job? It's something that regardless whether you're D1, 2, 3, or 4, it is not too soon, as Dr. Peltz had mentioned, to actually start, thinking about what are some of the needs that I'm going to have to develop prior to applying for a job. So when you start to see what is out there, it's really will help you tune in to think about, okay, what do I want to be? Most of you, when you graduate, will do a residency program. A large percentage from that may do a specialty program. So you may not necessarily think I need to understand or know these things now, but you really do, because some of the principles are still the same and haven't changed. So when you do graduate dental school, and if you go into a residency program, you are going to get paid most likely. Yay, finally.
I'm going to distract you for 1 second. We both highly, highly
Yes.
recommend that you do a residency program, especially right now, because you are definitely going to have learning voids. Like, I'm sorry to be so blunt about it, but they're going to be there. And the best way for you to start taking care of that right away is to do a residency program. But even before all of this, we felt that new graduates should do a residency program, because you have a lot of material to learn in a short amount of time, and you really just need a little extra time to get it all. So, Karen.
Right. So the residency program, if you are fortunate to get into a paid program, you are then now going to be called an employee. As an employee, they will remove taxes. So they will pay you, and let's say your residency pays you $60,000, and you're expecting, $5,000 a month. Well, that's really the gross amount. And based on especially New York, New Jersey, tax-wise, you have to figure on about a third of what you earn goes to taxes. It's just the way it is. So that's called an employee. When you finish a residency program, you're going to look for employment. Most of us, when we graduate, finish a residency program, you don't all of a sudden just say, you know what, I'm going to start a practice, and you go into your own practice. You're going to work for different organizations, different types of dentists, and we'll get into those different types of places that are opportunities for you guys to work in. But when you go work there, you might be an employee, or what we call a W-2. So that means they will take taxes out. But you might also get a job where they will call you a 1099 or an independent contractor. If you are an independent contractor, and let's use that same example, I say your salary is $60,000. You expect to get $5,000 a month. If you are an independent contractor, a 1099, then I will pay you that full $5,000. But you, the independent contractor, are responsible for your own taxes. And this is something that unfortunately young dentists get into trouble, because you don't prepare to pay taxes, and you work that first year and you did really well and you're so proud of yourself and everybody else is so happy. And then you speak to an accountant, and the accountant said, wow, Dr. Studley, you did great. You made $150,000. You owe the government $50,000. I was like, excuse me? Well, that's called taxes. I was like, when do I have to pay that? In 2 weeks. Okay. That's a lot of dentistry to do, working for somebody within 2 weeks, especially if you're doing good dentistry. So if you are a 1099 independent contractor, please meet with an accountant. They will create what we call quarterly estimated taxes, so that every quarter you'll pay your federal, your state, your city. By doing that, it will also help enable you to be able to save, to pay back your student loans, especially when you're planning to do that. So that's important. Also, believe it or not, when you start a residency program, you're going to sign a contract with the residency program. So when
I'm going to interrupt again, and I do want to mention that in 2 weeks,
Right.
we are talking about contracts. So don't let your mind start spinning just yet. In 2 weeks, this is our topic, and we're going to talk all about contracts. So hang on.
So when you are offered a job, and especially with a lot of the corporates, full-time positions, there'll be a contract that you'll be asked to sign. But even in your residency program, that may be the first time when you'll see a contract. In a residency program, the contract usually, there's no flexibility. Here it is. If you don't like it, doc, I guess this is not the residency program for you. So there really is no flexibility in that. You should still read everything about it and get the right advisor to review that. But when you start looking for employment, you will be given a contract or an agreement that may be flexible. And we won't know it's flexible until we actually look to negotiate. And my rule of thumb is every employment contract that is given to you outside of the hospital is 100% negotiable
But
until
we're
you
going
sign.
to talk about that
But
in
we'll
2
leave
weeks.
that as that.
Yes.
Now, I think we all are looking forward to graduating dental school, finishing residency, specialty programs, whatever it might be. And now we're going to want to get paid. This has sort of been the lifelong dream, getting paid.
Well, getting
as a dentist.
retired is the life.
Well, that's true too.
Retiring is the lifelong
And we
dream.
could talk about that, the both of us. I think if you asked us, so when did you decide you wanted to retire? And I think it was the first day that I started working.
Even though we loved what we did.
Still did it for
nice
30
to think
something
about
years,
retirement.
but it's also good to think and also plan for it.
Yes.
But
Yes,
but
getting paid is good.
Getting paid is great. So there's so many different ways, though, that we as dentists can be compensated. Now, when you are in a residency program, the reason why I always mention that, because for most of you, that's going to be the next move. So in a residency program, you're going to be that W-2 employee. They're going to take out taxes, and that's pretty much how you'll be paid. You don't have to pay additional taxes at the end. But when you are applying for jobs post-residency, there are so many different ways that you might be offered to be paid. And this will be in writing. And if it's not, you should make sure that anything that is promised to you in a job interview or a job offering, even if it's not put in writing, and we'll discuss that, how you will put it in writing so that you have, an actual legal record of this. But there are so many different ways for us as new dentists to get paid. And I'll talk about all of them and tell you the ones that I recommend that you not get paid that way. But the terminology that you should become familiar with, the words are draw, collection, production, net production, guarantee, salaries, and then of course, I keep mentioning taxes. So what does this mean? Well, as an example, I offer you a job and I say to you, doctor, I am going to give you a $120,000 draw for your first year. So that means you are going to get $10,000 a month starting. That's unbelievable. You were making nothing last year or 60,000. You're doubling your income. 120,000 draw, 10,000 a month. But what we're going to do is we're going to pay you that against 30% collection. What does that mean? So every 3 months, you and I will sit down and reconcile. And I always never liked when a boss would say to me, we have to reconcile. That never seemed like it was going to be in my favor. And usually it wasn't. And if you are getting paid on a draw, so at the end of 3 months, I paid you $30,000. Beautiful. We sit down, I go over your collections, and based on your collections, you get 30% of that. Out of that, you collected $25,000. Pretty good. You only owe me, your employer, $5,000. But you don't have to pay me back. We'll just carry it to the next quarter. Well, if the next quarter, if you didn't do 5,000 above that, don't worry. You owe that to me next quarter. I have seen young dentists almost work for a quarter just paying back what they owe to the employer. I have seen young dentists wanting to leave the job, and they couldn't leave the job until they were able to pay the employer back. So the draw sounds glamorous because you go from zero to a 6-figure income and you think it's guaranteed, but it's not. So please renegotiate the draw, and I highly recommend not getting paid on that. You can also get paid on what we call collection, which means I will pay you 30% of what you collect. Well, that's really not great. If it's an insurance-based practice, I might do a procedure today, bill out to the insurance company, And on a good day, I'm hoping the insurance company pays me in 30 to 40 days. That's on a good day. Usually it goes 60 days, maybe 90 days. So now you're not getting paid until I collect that money. As a new dentist, you will starve. Okay. It's great for the person that you work for because they don't have to outlay any income to you. So once again, I don't recommend that you get paid on collection. But what you could do is, because most job offerings now in private practices or small practices, not corporates or DSOs, they will pay you on collection. And the going rate right now is 30% of collection. If you are being paid on collection, you must negotiate to get a guarantee per day, which means you go in, you have an 8-hour day there. You want to be guaranteed no less than $500. On average, we're looking at for a general dentist in New York and New Jersey, somewhere between $500 and $750 a day, guaranteed.
That's metropolitan New York.
Even in the suburbs,
Okay.
For profitable practices.
Maybe not upstate.
Right. I would ask for it.
Yeah.
Always ask higher, but we'll talk about that in the contracts.
Yes, we will.
But you want to guarantee that if you're going to work for that doctor for 8 hours, that you are guaranteed $500. What that means is if you collected $1,500, 30% of collection, then you actually made your number. But let's say if you collected less, you only did $1,000 of production that day. Based on 30%, it's a little more than $300. You're still guaranteed your $500. That's important because you are hired in a practice like that. And I am going to guarantee you an income per day. I will make sure you have a schedule that's busy enough for you to make that number. I'm not going to let that. And I have had, unfortunately, young dentists, they work in a practice that's trying to get them busy because they added new insurance on. And you sit there and you can't even produce, and walk away with, a decent paycheck.
I want to talk about one thing for a minute because Dr. Studley mentioned the very fact of getting paid. And often new dentists have trouble understanding their value. So I think it's important enough to talk about that when somebody is looking for an employee, such as an associate dentist, they need you. So you may feel like I have no experience. Maybe, if I'm sitting here for 2 hours and not getting paid, well, I'm learning something in the process. That's all true. And we hope that you'll take every job you have and make it into a learning experience. But you also need to be paid. You have value. And if you're in a working situation and you're not feeling like you're valued, that's a very bad situation to be in. So I just think it's very important when you're new to remember that even though you're very insecure and we all know you don't have a lot of experience, and all of that's true, you have learning voids, all of it's true, you still have a lot of value. You're coming in with skill and you've gotten through your program, and this potential boss needs you. So when you're making these kinds of decisions and at your interview, don't go in feeling like somebody's doing you a favor. Also, don't go in like you're doing them a favor.
Right.
That's not going to work out well for you. But you want to go in understanding that you do have value.
Yes. So another way that if you can get this beautiful, but most dental practices are no longer paying like this, if you can get paid on just straight production. So that means if you produce $2,000 worth of dentistry, but the front desk only collected $1,000, you're still going to get your 30% of the $2,000, regardless of what has been collected or has come into insurance. That's the best way. If you get to write your own agreement, getting paid a guarantee against production is really the best way. Unfortunately, it's really not the flavor that's been going on.
Those jobs are few and far between.
Right. Another term that you might see, especially in contracts, they will tell you that they will pay you on what they call net production. So I'll review your agreement or contract, and I'll say to you, okay, you do realize you're getting paid on collection. And they're like, no, the recruiter, they said I'm getting paid on production. I was like, no, it's net production. Net production also means collection. Don't tell them that I told you that, okay? But you really want to be aware of that. That's why terminology is so important. The same way we as dentists have a whole nother terminology. Contracts have a terminology. Finances have a current terminology. Another way also that you want, which we mentioned, was the guarantee. So you want that guarantee against a 30 to 35% production if you can get it, but collection, all right? A lot of the corporates will pay you a salary, a guaranteed salary, and some will pay you a guaranteed salary against 30% collection. You can't lose on that. Post-pandemic, a lot of the salaries that I was seeing throughout the country on average is about 150,000. And that's a guarantee, and they do that against collection. Now, of course, when you do work with that kind of contract, you are giving up certain rights that will go over in your contracts, because nobody's going to pay you that kind of money without also, holding you to their employment. But we'll go over all of that.
So join us in 2 weeks when we talk about contracts, and you'll hear lots and lots more about that. But in the meantime, we actually got some questions in advance, and one of them was, when should this class of 2021 start looking? And in general, when should people start looking? So as we said in the beginning, you should start looking now. I'm putting looking in quotes because you want to start to create your network. So a vehicle like Doccupations, if you want your free membership, that's a great vehicle to start just trying to meet people in the community, reach out to them. There's a message center, talk to them, and maybe start developing some relationships. So it's never too early to do that. And of course, the more you have experiences, like if you can go meet with a dentist in a private practice and go to a residency program and go meet with somebody in a corporate dental office, you'll start to have a little more of a framework about how to make your decision about which direction do you want to go. Because you made a decision to go to dental school, but for 4 years, you really don't have to decide too much more until you start thinking about what you're going to do after dental school. And now that whole education process, that self-education, starts all over again.
Right. This is the time, unfortunately, it may not be as accessible, but even as a D1, like when you're planning a residency and you say, all right, I want to stay in New York, or I want to stay in New Jersey, the residency programs that are there. You call these residency directors, once they're allowing, so-called outsiders to come in, and you show once a week. You show up once a week. If that's the program that you want, and you have been there once a week, once every 2 weeks, you become a familiar face. The director knows you. A lot of the attendings know you. The residents know you. You do realize during residency interviews, they bring in the current residents to also sit on the interviews. Mm-hmm. So your peers, who are only 1 year ahead of you, are also interviewing you. And if you've been a fixture and they're familiar with you, you'll walk in and they're like, great, can you start July 1st? All right. So when is it too soon? It's not too soon. Same thing with a job, especially now when you could start going to a dental office and feel comfortable yourself. Dentists are in need of dental assistants.
Yeah.
All right. What a great way to, first of all, learn chairside. All right. Especially certain shortcomings that you're not getting right now clinically. Working with a dentist chairside, they would love to have you. All right. It helps them in so many different ways and helps yourself in so many different ways. So I don't think it's too soon.
No. So before you start looking for a job, though, you need to make a lot of decisions. And one of the first things you have to think about is, where do you want to be? Because even with your residency program, I've had people say to me over the years, I'm having so much fun in Manhattan and I really don't want to go home just yet. So I'm going to do my residency program in the city. And the thing is that you're not developing that network that you're going to need once you get out. If you're going to do your residency program, it's a better idea to do it where you're going to be. So these are all things that you have to decide is, are you going to relocate or are you going to stay where you are? Do you have family who would be impacted by that decision? If you do, it should probably be a family meeting to decide where are you all going to relocate. This isn't just about you anymore. And then you also have to think about where are the opportunities. So you want to do a little demographic study of, well, if you want to go somewhere, you have to check out that place and make sure, do they need dentists there? Maybe they don't need any dentists, or maybe there's a much better opportunity in a different location where they are absolutely in need of dentists. So all of that information is available at the ADA's website. They have all kinds of demographic reports
and no
for you
cost.
to look at, no cost. And of course, you know, ASDA is a branch of the ADA. Yeah, so that's all there for you as student dentists. And you also want to think about the cost of living, because there are places where you can make that 150 and it'll go very, very far. And there are places where all that's going to pay for is your rent.
Manhattan.
Or at least that's how it was. So you want to try to start thinking the where is very important before you can decide anything else. Then you need to start thinking about what your goals are. So what type of practice do you want to have?
You know, I was actually speaking to someone who graduated a few years ago. She's a holistic dentist and now looking to possibly leave the state, and started discussing different states. And one of the most important things that she has to really look for is, especially in a holistic type of practice, you know, she needs to be in an area that has a certain level of education, a certain level of appreciation of that type of dentistry, that type of medicine. So she was just thinking, oh, I think I'm going to go to this state, or I think I'm going to go to that state. And, you know, she was picking one of the states, and it was, you know, there really would not be the need for her type of dentistry, at least in the city that she was looking to go. So, and she was picking up and moving a family there.
Right.
So it's not just you that's planning this.
And you need to also think about what are your economic goals, because there are places where you're just going to do better than in other places. And you also really want to think about your work-life balance and decide that's going to factor in very much to the type of practice that you want to be involved in or develop yourself is how much of you is all about work? Is that all that you want to be doing? Do you have a need to spend downtime and family time and so on? You need to think about all these things before you can even start thinking about how to find a job, because you want to find a job that will make you happy. You don't want to just find a job. Anyone can find a job, but you've gone to school for 4 years to develop a career, and you don't want to be unhappy in your career. You need to be happy in it. It's very important. So these are all things that are going to help you make some choices that will lead toward a happy career, not just a successful one.
Just want to chime in here, and so that you don't feel disappointed if you take a job and, you know, 2 weeks in, you're like, this is just not what I expected it to be. And depending, and we'll talk about this, if you signed a contract or an agreement, and, you know, with whatever professional notice you have to give before leaving, and you leave and you're like, oh, just left a job at dental school. And then you take another one. And it was like, oh my God, this one is worse than the other. So I think I had 5 jobs before I finally landed in the one that I kept.
I had 6 jobs in the first year.
First year.
Because the other thing is, you should never compromise what you know to be right. So if somebody's asking you to do something that you think is the wrong thing to do, and that does include your patients, by the way, you're not going to do it, because you're the professional, you're the one who has the education, is supposed to be giving the guidance. And in terms of an employer asking you to do something that you don't think is right, if you do something that's not right and it winds up not being right, your employer isn't liable, you're liable.
Right. All of a sudden,
So,
Doctor Who,
right.
you know?
So
But
you
yeah,
need to really always do the right thing. It's a weird thing to say, but I know that when I graduated dental school, we had one particularly fierce instructor who is still always on my shoulder,
mine
making
too.
sure that I do the right thing, always checking my work. And because once you're out, nobody's checking your work. So you have to be your own very diligent checker.
And you don't want the next person to check your work to be an attorney. Okay? That is never a good thing when they are checking
Which
your
brings us to
dentistry.
the third lecture of our series,
True.
which is what to do if you've been sued. So.
Wow, how did I even just know to bring that in there? You know, while we're on this, we would like to talk about competition because
all of you there enjoying this lecture together are each other's competition, but we don't want you to feel like you're each other's competition. So we don't want you to go about this job search in a
competitive.
What did they used to call it? When you would chop off someone else's head to get yourself ahead. I can't think of the word, but you're not going to be competitive in that sense. You're going to be the best person that you can be at your interviews, and that will make you a more desirable candidate. So we're telling all of you the same things, but only some of you are going to do it. And the ones who do it are going to be more desirable candidates. So you're not in competition with anyone because you're the only one who's you. So take that and make something out of it.
Right, and that we recommend that you create your own brand.
That's what we call that, is creating your own brand.
Create your own brand. Like, for example, I did not want to grow this beard this kind of length or anything like that. But I wanted something to be something, you know, that when people look afterwards, then there's like, do you remember what he said? No, but did you see his beard?
Oh boy.
So hopefully that you do remember a little bit more from that.
So, but Dr. Studley does have a point, is that the way to create your brand is to point out your outstanding qualities, or not necessarily point them out, but certainly emphasize them. And think about your interview in ways that can actually highlight them. So maybe you're not the most outgoing person in the world, but maybe your organizational skills are amazing. So you might want to find some way to just bring that up in your interview.
You know, people think that they don't have a certain value. Like you said, the minute that somebody is interviewing you, your value has actually gone up because you are fulfilling a need. It's the actual one moment when the desk is actually on the opposite side, because that person that is looking at you really needs you.
So you have to think in that situation about what is it that I can offer to this employer. So that is what's going to give you the competitive edge. When you figure out what it is that you have to offer to that employer, you are going to dazzle them, because you're not just looking for what can they do for you, but you're trying to figure out what you can do for them. And that will make you an outstanding candidate to begin with.
Yes. So, you know, as we talk about this, and then also with your interviewing, you should practice with each other, because that really will make a difference. And fortunately, as dentists, we're kind of used to talking to people. So we're not shy. We're already outgoing. That's one of the reasons why we chose dentistry. So just work on that so that when you are presenting, it's yours. It's not like a script that you read.
I was just going to define that. So we talk about presentation skills. So some presentation skills are like what we're doing right here. We're presenting, and we have some skills that let us do that. Another type of presentation skill is presenting a case to a patient. You guys have to do that every day. And another type of presentation skill is presenting yourself to a potential employer. So you really just need to use those skills that you're in the constant state of developing during dental school. And every time that you are presenting a case to a patient, think about it in the sense of presenting yourself. You're branding yourself. That patient doesn't have to stay with you. They can go to any student at the school. They can go to your director and request a change. Why do they want to stay with you? You're presenting yourself. This is a skill that you need to develop to find a good job.
So along those lines, you have to develop your CV, curriculum vitae. You probably had one when you applied to dental school, and most likely won't look at it again until you're ready to apply for your GPR or your job. When in reality, you really should be updating that CV every single year, because certain changes and certain things that you've done in your D1 year, D2, 3, and 4 will show your development, from the beginning of dental school until the end. What you also may not think is important because that's what will make you stand out. Your CV, and there's so many different ways that you can do it. I will tell you the most impressive CVs that I have seen have been web-based CVs. So these students actually put their CV, they made their own website. You go to their website, it's a picture of them in a nice, fresh, clean coat. It's probably the one that they got in the white coat ceremony 4 years earlier. And with that, you then have all these different drop downs, and they'll see recommendations, and you go to recommendations and there'll be live video recommendations of, let's say, myself under the banner of the school. And instead of just a letter, I'm actually speaking about this student. And then you go to all these different drop downs and you'll see perio, pros, implants, aesthetics, all different cases before and after, right? Ridiculously impressive.
So that is a perfect example of a way to distinguish yourself from other candidates, because when everyone else is handing out their 2-page CV that has pretty much everything they did before dental school and not much since, because what are they going to add? And you have this comprehensive CV that includes all the skills that you developed in dental school, because the dentist hiring you doesn't know what you learned. They don't remember what they learned in dental school, and things have changed a little bit since then. When they see this web-based phenomenal thing, and this web-based CV that Dr. Studley saw was what, like 10 years ago?
Yeah.
He's still talking about it.
Yes.
Like, think of that. Just think of that. That made so much of an impression. And we've seen so many students. Have you ever seen one like that since then?
Just his 2 other friends.
And we talk about it all the time in lectures like this. So this is what I mean. Like, if you take all of these little tips and you put them all together, if you're not sure how to make yourself stand out, there are lots of ways you could do it without being, competitive or obnoxious about it.
But it also even shows one step further. Once again, I was just so impressed that they did this. If I didn't get a chance to even read it, I'd want to hire this kid, because just look what he can do. And just as an aside, I showed you one of the other one's office that he's opening in California yesterday, with the marble staircase going to the duplex dental office that he's opening.
He's still branding himself. But there are professional services that will put together a resume for you. So if you don't have those skills, because not everybody can do everything, and no reason you should, there are people you can hire to help you with that.
And also, why we would like you to start your CV in D1, start collecting your letters of recommendation. So when you finish D1 and that operative instructor, just like, oh, Studley, you were the best. Then you get to D4 and they're like, wait, I had you 4 years ago. What row were you? Okay. The love is lost. Okay. Even though they still might remember. So when you finish your D1 year, if there was a professor that you really had a great working relationship with and would want them to support you, ask them to write it now.
And always ask them if they can write you a favorable letter, because just because they'll write you a letter, it doesn't mean it's going to be one that will get you into the program of your choice or get you the job of your choice.
Right.
So be direct and say, can you write me an outstanding letter? I really would like an outstanding one. And hopefully they'll be honest right back. And if they can't, then you've saved yourself and you have to find someone who can.
So now I think it's a great time that we get into you marketing yourself, and also what tools that we really need to do that.
Why don't we market ourselves? Because we wanted to remind you all that we are going to send everybody in attendance a $5 Starbucks gift card just make sure you're going to see a link in the chat and send us your email address, and we'll get that right out to you.
Right. Normally, like we did last year, I think we bought everybody pizza.
Yeah.
So we can't have Domino's delivered to everybody's house, but we can at least eventually send you to Starbucks.
So I think we can move on to how to find employment,
Right.
because I'm sure everybody's dying to hear about that.
Yes. So how to find employment. And now, we've all been poised for finding the employment because everything that we've been finding has been online. And now there's more companies, Doccupations being one of them, Indeed, Craigslist, to name a few, that are dental job matching companies. Most of them, there's either a nominal fee or no fee. And we recommend that you try everyone. Also recommend, regardless where you're looking to go. So if you are looking to relocate to another state, you should contact the local dental society there. First of all, they all have programs for the new dentist. And even during the COVID, because I know that I've presented at a lot of the new dentist programs, virtually. So those things are still going on. And they love new members. They don't charge the new members at the beginning. They want you to become part of the association. And you should become part of their groups. Why? You'll attend these meetings, whether in person or virtually. You will meet all these other dentists. These are dentists, let's say, that are not necessarily looking for an associate. But the way the rule of dentistry works, every dentist knows another dentist who knows another dentist. And somehow,
and if they're not looking
help.
now, they will be looking
Right.
in the future. That's the normal progression of a dental career. Is you start off, as an associate, you become an owner, you hire an associate, you retire, your associate becomes the owner. So at some point or another, they'll be looking for somebody.
Right. Also, a lot of the dental societies have job boards of their own, that are just for that location. So it's important that you also, contact them. And once again, that's why it's a good thing to be a member to any of those.
You can also join study clubs where you're going to find some more senior members of the profession. But again, even if you don't, it's really just about networking, because somebody's going to know somebody
Right.
who needs somebody. So that's the way that it was done in the old-fashioned days, and it still works. Just that word-of-mouth thing is pretty powerful.
While you're in your residency program, speak to your attendings, because once again, they may have colleagues that are looking for somebody. Great opportunities for that. So, use your residency program for a lot of different things, not just learning, but then also excelling, into the next step of your career.
And your dental school is going to have alumni events, and make sure to go to those, because dentists love to hire associates who went to the same school. It's just the way that it is. There's something, it's your alma mater. They feel like your family, or maybe they think you're still learning the same way they did, 40 years ago. But that's another good place to network and meet people.
And another good way of just playing the numbers, if you are deciding, I want to practice in zip code 11111, you get a listing of all the dentists in that zip code. And you put together your CV and you snail mail, if you can get their emails, and you do a mass mailing. And just based on numbers, once again, these are to dentists who are not even looking to hire an associate. Just based on numbers, you will get positive results.
We both got jobs that way when we graduated. So we've had a few questions.
Right.
I think we should interrupt
Sure.
our program. This question has been typed into chat. When is the best time and what is the best way to reach out to residency programs / dental offices to get your face out there? Would it seem obnoxious if a D1 tried doing this in the spring semester or summer? Thank you, Rachel, for that question.
Right. As we briefly mentioned, I think it should start now.
Never too early.
Right. Send an email to get it started. Hard to get these directors on the phone, but send them an email, especially if they know there's somebody of interest. And you know, the directors are also teachers.
And D1, you know, you guys are like the babies of the profession, and it's so cute to us. There's no other way to say it, but it's just so cute. Like, for example, we both had a mentor program at MIU, and I once had a father come in with his daughter who was 8, and she said, "I have wanted to be a dentist my whole life." So of course we did everything we could to get this little girl. I mean, you can't let her observe or anything, but my point is, when a D1 comes in and they're so interested that they want to come and assist in your office, like, unless the dentist really had, now with COVID, I'm sure
Right.
that's going to present certain challenges, but you can just say, you know, you just wanted to start a relationship, you'd like to pick their brain, you want a mentor, whatever it is, start creating these relationships, even if they do
Right.
have to be virtual.
They'll invite you. I've presented at study clubs, and I'll see this dentist who is brought. It's like, oh, I have 3 dental students with me.
Yeah, you're the
You know.
junior, you're our junior partners. So the senior dentists are very, as a rule, are very encouraging and anxious to help junior dentists. One
all
more
right.
question
Sure.
and then we can move on. How will this new virtual environment affect our interviewing techniques? Do you have any suggestions on how to stand out virtually? So thank you, Michelle, for that question.
Well, that's really where, number one, that web-based CV
Yeah.
will really just make you stand out. But also, if you are doing,
I think there are a lot of things you can do to stand out. So you want where you're sitting to be a quiet room with no distractions. We have a cat who is desperately wanting to come in and interact with all of you, but we're not letting her. You want the lighting to be good. You want to be looking at the camera. I think that probably all of you, being in dental school during this time, have a lot more experience with how to engage virtually than we can even tell you. So what I would suggest is, when you're in these virtual conversations with other people, start paying attention to you know, yourself a little bit, but also, how is the interaction going with you and the other person? Are you able to connect in a more meaningful way? Test it out with people you know, your family, your friends. Start making these conversations as seamless as possible, so then you can start using all of the things we spoke about in person, and engaging them with, you know, your exceptional qualities and so on.
I think also, as we start to talk about, you know, the interview, because now, if all goes well, we get an interview.
Right.
And now what do we do? You need to prepare for that interview. So number one, hopefully when you are also applying for the job, you did your research, which is sort of a game changer. You guys get to see what you're going into before you even go into. So if you were interviewing with Dr. Peltz tomorrow, you would go look at her website. And on her website, you can get a host of information. You most likely may know where she went to dental school. You'll know, obviously, where her practice is, but the type of practice that it is. Because maybe it doesn't say that they accept any insurances. They won't say we don't accept insurances, some actually do, but the ones that do will say that they do. It might have office hours on there. It might even list procedures that practice does. For me, that is a host of information that I can have now prepared as questions.
You also want to check out the philosophy of the practice, if you can. Often they write a description or of the practice or an about us, and see if you can get a feeling for the people who are working there and whether or not you think they would align with your philosophies of practice, because there are many different philosophies out there.
So knowing that, now when you're at the interview and it comes to questions, and we highly recommend that you have questions prepared. If you should have the option to have this interview, and at the end of the interview, the employer says to you, "Do you have any questions, doctor?" And you're like, "No, I'm good." Guess what? You just helped that employer, because that employer, after you leave, says, I'm good too. I'm good not to hire you. Because if you really couldn't come up with questions, then maybe this wasn't important enough for you. And the person that's looking to hire you, they're hiring you for one of the most important things in their lives. And they just want to see that you have that even before you even have a part of this. So having those prepared questions, you'll be able to see certain things in my website. You may see hours. I'm closed Saturdays or Sundays. Maybe you can work Saturdays and Sundays. Maybe I don't do Invisalign. Well, you're class 1 certified in Invisalign. Now, during that interview, you are now not only taking from me, it's the exact opposite. You are giving me. An employer loses control of the interview when the other person on the other side is actually giving something back, as opposed to we're thinking, all right, I got to give up 30% of my production. You're going to use up so much more supplies than myself, because you're used to wasting stuff because you didn't pay for it. You know, all these things are going through my mind. When now all of a sudden you're willing to work extra hours that I'm closed, I'm seeing a growth of production. You do 3 procedures that I don't, I'm seeing a growth of production.
It's important to remember that when an employer is hiring an associate, they're worried that they won't be able to give you enough work. They're worried that you're going to cost them more than you'll bring them. So when you start telling them ways that you think you can help them grow your practice, you're telling them, I can pay for myself here. You're not going to wind up paying for me. I'm going to be helping you. And that is a great relief for an employer to hear.
Yes.
So when we talk about controlling the interview, we're saying you want to be able, you know, that elevator pitch. We don't know if you've heard about that yet, because that's like something you talk about about an interview.
Well, remember when a lot of people used to go in one elevator?
Yeah. Well, the elevator pitch is when you can tell somebody in the 15 seconds from one floor to the next, like enough about yourself that they're going to remember you. That's what you need to create. So you want to, all of this is tied into the research that you're going to be doing about that job. The questions that you're going to be asking. Someone asked us what are good interview questions to ask. That depends on the practice that you're looking at. So you have to do the research and you have to look at that practice and find out everything that you can. And once you do, you'll be able in 15 seconds to say what you're interested in with that particular job, why you think you'd be a good fit, and you want to keep it very short. And that in and of itself will also impress the employer, because you'd be communicating very effectively. And all that this is, an interview, is about communication skills. Can you communicate effectively and successfully with your potential employer? So some people communicate better than others. And just like any other skill, it's a matter of practice. So if you're not sure that you're good at this, then you should be role playing with your friends and your family and everybody else.
So, you know, we got you through the interview. Now what? Well, you leave and you're just so happy to get out of there, and that's it. And, you know, let's just do the quick and easy thing. Let's just send a quick email, you know, from my phone. Hey, Dr. Studley, it was great. Thanks for the interview. You know, hope to hear back from you soon. You know, if you're emailing, that's one thing. If you're sending it to an office, that email may not even get to the person that interviewed you, especially if office managers are doing that. One of the things that does stand out is actually mailing a thank you. All right. Why? Because nobody does that anymore. I think I got a thank you from a student, and I was like, Doctor, I got to thank you. Like, look at this. You know, it just stands out. It remembers.
We have about 5 minutes left. Time has flown. But before we go, I think we should talk about a working interview.
Yes.
I also do want to address, we had a lot of questions, and if there's somewhere we can post answers, we'd be delighted to do that. So yes, Michelle, you can let us know, and we'd be happy to answer after the fact. But And I also want to acknowledge that there are pre-dental students here, and I'm sorry we haven't really had a chance to answer some of your questions, but again, we'll be happy to answer all of those once we know where to do that. We'll be happy to do that. But for the dental students who are looking at interviews and thinking about how that's going to work, usually or sometimes a second interview is a working interview. And I would say the most important thing to know about that is you do not have insurance to work on a patient at a working interview.
You must have your own malpractice insurance, even if you are going for a two-patient, two-pro fee.
Nothing. It doesn't matter. You did an oral exam, you've looked at a patient, you're practicing without a license. You're an unlicensed
dentist, and you don't have your own malpractice.
So
you, the associate, are never covered under the dentist, okay? And even if that dentist is a teacher at a school and you go for that working interview at their private office, the coverage doesn't carry over. So you must have your own malpractice coverage, even if you're going on a working interview, all right? It's just something that unfortunately some of you make that mistake, and it's just the extra stress that you don't want. Also, if a dentist is willing to do that, to put you in jeopardy, that's the best thing that could have happened to you, because now you know you don't want to work for that person.
That's true. So I am happy to announce that we have a winner for our Amazon gift card, our $50 Amazon gift card, and that is Liana Penafiel. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Liana, I don't know if you're here, but you do have to be here to get your gift card, so hopefully you are. And we will be back with you in 2 weeks to talk about contracts. It's another content-filled lecture. There's an enormous amount to cover. Please tell your friends, because this is important information, as you can see from today, that you're going to need to know. And most of the schools don't really cover it in this kind of detail. So even if you were in class, you may not be getting this. So we were very happy to be here, and we're delighted to help. Yes. We're happy to meet all of you this way. Next time, maybe we can see some more faces. And we'll see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, I just wanted to wrap up and say thank you so much, both of you, for spending your Thursday evenings with us. I will be posting this recording on our As a District 2 website tomorrow under the link. And if you go to the website now, you will also find the next 2 events that they were speaking about. So you can register for those as well at that website. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to send them to me, and I will send them along, and hopefully we will be able to get those answers back to you. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining.
Thank you.
And thank you so much, Dr. Eric and Dr. Ivy. We really appreciate you guys spending your time with us and sharing and imparting your knowledge.
Our pleasure.
Well, thank you.
Anytime.
Be
Have
safe.
a good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.